All right, let's get right into this. We're about to unpack one of the weirdest puzzles from the Cold War. It's a time when two of the world's most bitter enemies, we're talking nations on the very edge of nuclear war, suddenly started to sound exactly alike.
And that is the central question we're tackling here. It's a total paradox, right? How does that even happen? What could possibly make two superpowers who disagreed on pretty much everything suddenly start pushing a single unified message?
To really get how bizarre this is, you have to remember who we're dealing with: the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China. Sure, they were both atheist communist states, but their ideologies were in a head-to-head battle. They were locked in this vicious fight to be the leader of the entire communist world. A rivalry so bad that in 1969 they actually fought a 7-month undeclared war. So let's be clear, these guys were not friends.
And yet, despite all that animosity, when researchers look back at their propaganda, they found something just wild. Whenever Moscow and Beijing both turned their attention to the same target, in this case, Australia, their messaging, their stories, their attacks, they became almost identical. So what on earth is going on here?
Okay, so let's dig into the evidence. Analysts have actually broken down these messages into these recurring themes they call archetypes. Think of these as the specific attack patterns that kept popping up over and over again from both Moscow and Beijing. So let's start with our first clue. One of the most common narratives they both pushed was this idea of Australia as a white racist fortress.
And this quote just nails the core claim. Both the Soviets and the Chinese hammered this point home, especially to all those newly decolonized nations in Africa and Asia. The message was simple. Australia's democracy, it's just a thin layer of makeup, cosmetics, hiding a project built on racial exclusion.
All right, but it didn't stop there. Here's another really powerful archetype they both love to use: the idea of Australia as nothing more than an American satellite.
So the narrative they were both pushing here was that Australia had no real independence. Its intelligence bases, its military, none of it was for Australia's benefit. It was all just a weapon pointed right at China and the USSR, acting on behalf of the United States. And again, this was a story told with equal passion by two so-called enemies.
And this is where it just gets incredible. I mean, look at the sheer scale of the overlap. This wasn't a one-off thing. It wasn't a fluke. The research shows that on 8 out of 9 major propaganda themes, the USSR and China were putting out structurally identical claims. And get this, sometimes they worked together, but other times they came to the exact same conclusion all on their own. No coordination needed. This is way too consistent to be just a coincidence.
So we've seen what happened, but the real question is, why? How is this even possible? Well, there's a theory from social physics that doesn't just explain it. It gives us a completely new way to think about how alliances and conflicts even work.
So the theory goes like this. Groups stick together in one of two ways. You have an optimistic system which unites people to build toward a common goal. Its energy comes from the inside, it's self-generated. But then you have a hostile system, and it doesn't unite around a goal, it unites around a common enemy. All of its energy is borrowed, sucked from the very thing it's against. Take away the enemy, and the whole system just collapses.
And that right there is the solution to our puzzle. Here's the key. The Sino-Soviet relationship wasn't ultimately built on a shared dream, but on a shared enemy, the entire US-led Western world. All that public fighting over ideology, that was real, sure, but it was just the tip of the iceberg. What was going on underneath was a foundational alignment against a common opponent that was way deeper and way more powerful. They didn't need to coordinate their propaganda because they were already pointing their guns at the same target.
So how does this alignment actually play out in the real world? Well, the theory gives us this incredibly powerful metaphor to understand it, something called the Carrion Call.
Think of it like this. A vulture spots a target and lets out a cry. Other predators, even if they're different species, hear that call. They don't call a meeting, they don't form a committee, they're all just instinctively drawn to the same target because they have the same appetite. In the world of propaganda, that hostile claim is the call, and anyone who shares the same enemy feels that resonance and they can't help but repeat it. This whole thing is explained by what the source material calls the married couple principle. Right? A couple can argue all day about small stuff, how to load the dishwasher, what to watch on TV. But if they share deep foundational values, that underlying alignment is what really holds them together. The Sino-Soviet split, that was the bickering. The shared hatred of the West, that was the foundation. So the process is actually pretty straightforward. It's almost like a chain reaction. Step 1, a hostile system locks onto its shared enemy. Step 2, that foundational alignment kicks in.
At that point, step 3, all the other surface-level squabbles, they basically become irrelevant. And the result, step 4, their propaganda, their claims, their stories all start to naturally echo each other. Convergence isn't just possible, it's practically inevitable.
Okay, so this is a really cool piece of Cold War history, for sure. But what's the big takeaway? Why does any of this matter for us, right here, right now?
Because this is way more than just a history lesson. Think of it like a diagnostic tool. It's a lens that gives us a powerful new way to analyze the conflicts and the alliances that we see playing out all around us today.
It gives us a really sharp set of questions to ask. So when you see a group or an alliance forming, you can ask, what's the glue here? Are they building toward a shared goal, or are they united against a shared enemy? If you magically took that enemy off the board, would the whole thing just fall apart? Is their energy coming from within, or is it borrowed from their target?
So the next time you're scrolling through the news and you see two countries that are supposed to be rivals, maybe even competitors, and they suddenly start using the exact same talking points about somebody else, you can ask yourself a new question. Are you watching some kind of complex back-channel diplomacy, or are you just hearing the echo of a carrion call?